Can we hear me? How we doing? Good, good. Did everybody put their name into the raffle? No. Anybody? Did I miss anybody? Did everybody get in here? Okay, we're going to get started. My name is Brienne Kropa, and I'm excited to have you all today. Looking at some new faces, so welcome, and it should be a good afternoon. Today's class, we're kind of focusing on more holiday meals and holiday sort of theme. So if you have your recipe packets, we're going to talk through a couple of these. We're going to make a kale salad, potatoes, a crispy tofu, a cranberry sauce, and a crustless pumpkin pie. Do we have any allergies to start with? Anybody have any peanut allergies? Should probably shut the door. Can you shut the door, Al? Yeah, there's a couple bees in here. No peanut allergies? No allergies? We good? Okay. I just don't want any issues with that. So I'm going to start. I have a couple freebies to give away. So we have some DVDs, and I have a cookbook and a little kids book for anybody you know. So we're going to start with that. And so everybody got in here, right? Yes, okay. Hey, Charlie, you want to help me? Okay, you want to pick one out? Just go ahead and pick it. Just reach in. Don't look at him. Don't look at him. Just put your hand in and grab one. That one? Okay, we have Miss Ruby. All right, which one do you want, Miss Ruby? There's a DVDs, and I'm assuming you don't want the kids' book. That one? Yeah. Cool. I think I'm good. Thank you. Do you want to pick another one for me, Charlie? Just one more, and then we'll do a couple at the end. Lynette B. Perfect. Let's go over here. So we have some DVDs on health, reversing diabetes, that one. Or there's the cookbook. I'll go with the book. Okay. All right. So our first recipe is, I forgot to say. So all of the recipes are going to be incredibly easy. You can do them. Anybody can do them. My husband that doesn't cook helped me do some this morning. So they're incredibly easy. So don't be intimidated by them. They're all healthy, low sugar. There's somebody at the door. So low sugar, plant-based, low oils, that sort of thing. And they're all budget friendly. So all of the ingredients that we use today can be purchased at Walmart in Benson. So nice and easy, easy to find, easy to get, and within a decent budget. You will see some similarities between the ingredients throughout the recipes. That helps keep the cost down because when you buy a thing of agave nectar, if you only use 1 tablespoon for one recipe, it's kind of a waste. So I like to incorporate the ingredients throughout the different recipes. So you'll kind of see a theme throughout. So our first recipe is going to be a kale quinoa salad. Now, how many of you, I need kale. Could somebody bring me some kale? Just plain kale? Yeah. Forgot the kale. How many of you like kale? How many of you don't like kale? Here, John. This is good. Thank you. Okay, I didn't like kale either. So I'm not a huge kale fan. This is one of the only ways I like to eat it when it's not in like a soup or something. So we have our kale. We're going to start by making our dressing. And I like to make a dressing in a jar. So we're gonna make this in here. And I forgot water. John, could I get some water? Just like up to there. Thank you. So we're gonna start by making it in the jar. I feel like when you make it in the jar, you can shake it real easily, and it makes it easier to clean up as well. And I am going to just do half recipes for most of these, just because we don't need a bunch of extras. So if I'm not going to use the same amounts as is in your packets. Do I need to speak up? Okay. Sorry. Okay. I am using smaller amounts than what's in your recipes. So we're going to start with our peanut butter in our jar. And it's 1 cup of peanut butter. And then we're going to add, I'm going to do about 1/4 cup in here. About like that. And then we're going to add the lemon juice, which is in the fridge, which I forgot to bring out as well. Lemon juice and milk. And then we're going to add 3 tablespoons of agave nectar or maple syrup. If you add maple syrup, you're going to get more of the maple flavor. The agave nectar will sweeten without the maple flavor. So we're just going to use agave nectar, and that's about 1.5 tablespoons. And then we need salt. My salt's back there too. I had it up here. I really did. I promise. All right. And then 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. 1, 2, 3. And again, I'm not doing the amounts that are up there. And a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. This one I am going to measure just because I don't want to add too much salt. And if you're on a low salt diet or you don't want to add too much salt, the salt isn't all that necessary, so you can also omit it if you want to. And then we're going to add garlic powder. Now, before I shake it, I want to get the peanut butter kind of mixed into the water a little bit better. So I like to just kind of push it around, because otherwise it's going to take a while to shake. So I just push it to the edges. And if you guys want to start serving, you can. All right. And then, like I said, I like to use the jar because I can shake it in the jar. So we have our dressing and we have our kale. Now this step is pretty important. Kale gets more tender when you squeeze it and squish it. So if you are going to cook with it, I recommend squeezing it and squishing it into whatever you're using, whether it be oil or a dressing or anything really, because it'll get the kale more tender. So we're going to start with that. So I've got my dressing. And I am going to just squish it in. Like I said, you want to squish the kale in between your hands, because then you'll get the kale to be a little more soft. So you seen how much kale I had? Originally it started with it about up here, and now it's all flat. That's because you're kind of squishing it into there, and it'll be a better bite when you eat into it. So now, once that's all squished together, we are going to add our quinoa and our peanuts. This recipe works great for leftover quinoa that you have at the in your fridge or sitting around if you made something with quinoa. Now, if you are making quinoa just for this recipe, I have a bonus recipe we'll talk about in a minute. So we have our quinoa, and we're going to put that in here. And then we're also going to chop up some peanuts, and we are going to add those in here as well. So at home, when I first was testing this recipe, all I had was mixed nuts. So you can use peanuts, you can use mixed nuts, you can really use whatever kind of nuts you want. It works well. So we're just going to chop these up quick. Thanks, Al. I like to leave them a little more coarse and not so fine, because then you actually get to taste the peanut a little bit better. So kind of like that. We're going to put those in there. And there we go. What do you guys think? Is it okay for kale? It's okay. A little more dressing. And see, that's the beauty, is the dressing will last. So this one is a really easy recipe to make up ahead of time because the dressing will last. So you can make up a jar of dressing. You can keep it in the fridge. You can make it whenever you're ready. And then you have a great green salad. And the salad, while it is better when you eat it right away, you can actually save any extra salad and eat it the next day. It does keep fairly well, so that's another option too. And when you dress the salad and you put it in the fridge overnight and stuff, it softens up the kale quite a bit. So that's also an option. So I mentioned a bonus recipe. I don't have any samples of this, but I did want to talk about this one because this is one of my favorite ways to use leftover quinoa. And it's on the back of your packet. It's the peanut butter quinoa. So when I make this recipe for the kale salad, I make the peanut butter quinoa, and I have that for breakfast in the morning. So it's just your leftover quinoa that you made up for your salad, peanut butter and some plant-based milk and some vanilla if you want, and then you let it boil. So it's like making like a rice pudding or something like that. And you just let it simmer in your little pot, and it's a great breakfast. Quinoa is incredibly nutritious, so it's a great option for the next morning. And I eat it just like oatmeal with a little bit of milk. I use almond milk, so a little bit of almond milk and vanilla or not vanilla, maple syrup or agave. And sometimes I like to put like a little drop of jelly or jam, depending upon what I have in my fridge. So, do you want to take that and I'll come get it from you later? Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, so how was those? Kit. Oh, here, this is that recipe. All right, so now we are going to do, I actually put these out of order. We're going to do potatoes. So I love potatoes. I don't know about you guys, but potatoes are one of my favorites. And hey, John, I have the 2 seasonings back there. Could you bring those up? Thank you, sir. So we're just going to start with butter potatoes or yellow potatoes. The type of potato in this, I think, matters. You get a lot softer of a potato if you use the yellow or butter. Sometimes they're called. It'll still work with any potato, but I really like these because it's a soft bite to it. So we're going to start by peeling our potatoes. Right, nice and easy. There we go. You could, if you want to keep the peels on, you can. I like to peel them, just my personal preference. All right, so then we're going to peel our potatoes, and I'll come right here. I like to cut these in like strips. So I cut them into strips, You can cut them however you want, but I like the strips. They're kind of like French fries, sort of. So we're going to go ahead and cut these up. And while you can dress these in the pan, you can put all your seasonings on them in the pan. I actually like to do it in a bowl. I am lazy, so I don't like having a lot of dishes. So I don't typically do that, but I like dressing them in the bowl because then you get everything all, your potatoes are all covered very well, and you get the seasoning throughout the potato much better. So I'm just gonna put these in there. Okay, so we have our potato strips. Like I said, I like just, go ahead. I like just cutting them into strips or like, I don't know, which cubes, well, rounded, you know, these size, like that. That's how I like to do them. And I do, so I personally don't like having a lot of oil, but I will use it when it's necessary. And I think these potatoes is one of those times where it is more necessary. So we're going to put a little bit of oil in here. And then I'm also a huge fan of spice mixes. It saves on your budget if you buy a mix instead of buying each individual spice. This one is one of my favorites. It's the, I have it listed up here. It's the wood fire garlic seasoning. And in my hurry this morning, I grabbed the taco blend, but it's still really good. The spices from Kinder's are great. If you have a Costco membership, I would buy them at Costco. They're a lot cheaper. You can get a small one from Walmart for like $5 or a big one from Costco for like $4 or $5. So the wood fire has a great smoky flavor to it, which really adds a lot to the potatoes. So it has like smoked paprika and garlic and things like that. So if you don't have it, it's fine. But I definitely recommend getting the smoked paprika because that will add so much flavor to your potatoes. So we're just going to toss that in here. And then nutritional yeast. So this wasn't one that I had seen on potatoes like this or roasted potatoes. I always put it on my mashed potatoes. But when I got this recipe from Deanna, I'm like, oh, so I tried it and it adds a nice buttery, cheesy sort of flavor to the potatoes. And it also helps with the coating and it kind of gives it more of like a breaded sort of feel to the potatoes. So I really recommend using the nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast. Yep. And again, you can find it at Walmart. So we're just going to put some of that in here. And this is also really high in vitamin B. So it's a great option for getting some more vitamin B. And then we're going to add some onion powder right here. And then some salt. And again, you can adjust these however you'd like. The original recipe that I got had a lot of chili powder in it, and I'm not a spicy person. I don't like a ton of spice, so I actually don't use it in my potatoes, but you're welcome to add that in there as well. And then when we mix it in the bowl, you're going to get your potatoes nice and covered evenly. So you just want to have that ratio from potato to oil to seasoning really nicely well done. There, just like that. And then we bake it on a cookie sheet and we bake it covered. So baking them covered allows the potatoes to kind of like steam a little bit in there and get nice and soft. And with the butter potatoes or the yellow potatoes, they really get very soft and it's a great option when you put the tin foil on them. So we cook them for about 30 minutes or so covered, and then we want them nice and crispy. And so we take off the tin foil or whatever you have covered them with, and you bake it for another 5 to 10 minutes or so until they're all crispy and nice.
Bake them in an oven about what?
What temperature? Oh, 400.
Okay, we've got it on there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. For how long?
If so 30 minutes in the covered and then about 5 to 10 uncovered. If you want to add the chili powder, I would say depending upon your spice level, really, maybe half a teaspoon to a teaspoon, depending upon how much spice you actually enjoy in your food. How are they? Yeah. Good. Need a little more salt? Yeah.
I use Celtic salt. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's a great one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I personally need iodine in my diet, so I use iodized salt just because I need that in my diet. So just depending upon what you need for your diets. Sorry, I'm just going to clean up my hands a little bit. Okay, so now we are going to do our tofu. How many of you like tofu? How many of you don't like tofu? Tofu, I think, has a bad rap. I think there's a lot of I don't know, stigma or whatever about tofu. So I personally think that tofu is a great option. It just depends on how you cook it. Now, we've all, I'm sure, been to restaurants and it's like they give you a plain block of tofu on your plate, right? That's never very good. Yeah. So the key to tofu is the seasonings. So I like the firm tofu in water. That's my favorite way to use it. You can freeze it and it can get a different texture. I don't personally like that as much. I like it straight out of the box, fresh. So we're going to open up our tofu. And my favorite way to do it is I like to cut on the sides over a sink and then cut the bottom and let it drain out a little bit. There we go. And then we're going to squeeze it. So you can use paper towels to soak up the extra water. I find it kind of wasteful, so I just grab a clean kitchen towel and I just squeeze it in here. So I just squeeze it. And for this one, we want a little bit of water in there, so we're not going to squeeze all of the water out. But you can see that it's definitely drier than it was when we got it first out of the packet. So we have our tofu. And then we're going to essentially bread the tofu. So I'm going to get our breading station going. Move this over here. So again, you can adjust this depending upon how much effort you want to put into it. I like adding the flour step in there, but if you don't have time for that, just go straight to the breadcrumbs. That works too. So I have a gluten allergy, so everything today is going to be gluten-free just because I need to cook gluten-free, so that's what it is. So these are the breadcrumbs I use, and we're just going to put them straight into here. So they're just the little breadcrumbs, panko breadcrumbs, that sort of thing. And then we have a flour mix, and that's going to go into one of our little containers. So this one for gluten-free, it's sorghum flour, teff flour, potato starch, and brown rice. That's my favorite way to mix them. But if you're you can just use regular flour, whole wheat flour, for whatever you want to. And then we are going to season our our flour. So we're going to add a little bit of onion powder. And a little bit of garlic powder. And then I'm going to add the wood fire smoked seasoning again, the smoked garlic seasoning. Again, if you don't have it, just use some smoked paprika or something like that. I just like the smoky flavor, especially when you're dealing with the tofu. It adds a nice, well, flavor. So we're going to mix this up together in our flour. So we got our flour, and then we have our breadcrumbs, and I'm going to use just some almond milk. Make sure that when you're doing something savory to use unsweetened original, because if you used a vanilla or a sweetened, you're going to get that flavor into whatever you're cooking. And breaded tofu with vanilla isn't the greatest. So definitely go for the unsweetened and the original. And if you want to make something sweet with it, you can always add the vanilla or a dash of sweetener to it. But I prefer to have the unsweetened on hand. You can, yep. Or all soy or any sort of plant milk. Walmart. Yeah, yeah. I was shocked when I seen that new. It's a new brand. Yeah, and they have silk and things like that too. It's right near there. Yep. So I am going to cut our tofu into squares so that we have nice little tofu to bread. So I'm going to start with it like this. I hope the instructions are understandable. So I'm going to start with it sitting up on my cutting board, and I'm going to cut into 3 different pieces. So 1, 2, 3. So we've got 3 tofu steaks. Now, if you want a tofu steak, if there's like 1 or 2 of you that you're feeding, you could do them like this, and you could have tofu steaks, which can be really good too. But I have more than 2 people in my house, so I like to cut them up a little bit more. So I cut them in half, and then in half. So we have our little tofu squares. And because we're using firm tofu, it's a little more stiff, which is helpful. If you froze it, it would give it even more stiffness. Just make sure that if you do freeze it to thaw it out ahead of time and to drain off more water, because it's going to have excess water. So we're going to put the tofu into our bread, and because it is moist, it'll pick up a lot of the flour, and then we're going to put it into our milk. And you're going to lose some flour in here, but I think it's worth it still. And then we're going to put it into our breadcrumbs, just like that. There we go. We have our little breaded tofu. And now, how many of you have air fryers? Do we have air fryers? A couple? Air fryers? Okay. If you have an air fryer, this would be an awesome recipe to use your air fryer with, because the air fryer gets it really nice and crispy. And you can bake it. These ones were baked. It works pretty well. But the air fryer will get it nice and crispy. So that's all that there is to it. Pretty simple, huh? Oh, cranberry sauce. We're going to do that one next. So we are going to make a cranberry sauce just because it's the holidays, right? Thanksgiving's coming, cranberries. I thought cranberries would be kind of festive. So we're going to use cranberries, maple syrup, and water. So just fresh cranberries. I did clean these. I just put them back in the bag. And we're going to add those to our pan. And I have a dry pan. There's nothing in there yet. So just the cranberries. And then we are going to add some maple syrup. I do like adding the maple syrup in this one because I like the maple flavor with the cranberries. Again, you could use agave if you don't like maple syrup. And it's pure maple syrup just because you don't want all the artificial stuff in there. So we're going to add about, the recipe says to add 4 tablespoons, but we're, not doing a full recipe. So we're only adding a couple. And then we're going to add some water. Now, I'm not going to add all of the water into the pan yet because we're going to add some when we blend it. So we're going to add just a little bit of water, and you can hear the cranberries kind of sizzle and pop. So we're going to let our cranberries have some fun in there and do some popping and get nice and soft. And I'm going to clean up a little bit while those are doing their thing. Now, you could use a gravy, your favorite gravy or something with the tofu. That's how I like to eat it all the time at home. I just with a gravy. But I went with cranberry sauce because it's Thanksgiving. So let's make a cranberry sauce. Why not, right? So we're going to let our cranberries just kind of hang out and do some popping. Do, 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 do. And I like to start the cranberry sauce and let it do its thing. And I just kind of forget about it there and stir it every so often while I'm doing other stuff because it just simmers and it's great, more simmer down. So we're going to let it just kind of simmer and soak. And then see your berries, they're already starting to pop. So like this one, it's already popping. And then I just push them with the spoon. And we're just going to let it simmer. Apparently she likes the cranberry sauce too. And then we're going to blend it. So that's all there is to it. It's 3 ingredients: cranberries, maple syrup, and water. And then we're just going to blend it to the consistency. I personally don't like chunks of cranberries, but if you like chunky cranberry sauce, you can leave it and just kind of mash it. But that's all there is to it. What do we think? How was the tofu? You can also cut them down smaller and bread them so you get more breading. And then you could toss it with some curry seasoning or some curry sauce or all sorts of things. So you can really, you know, get adventurous with the tofu. All right, I'm going to let that kind of sit, and we're going to not blend it because I need the blender for something else. So any questions on the cranberry sauce or anything so far?
The tofu, is that considered protein?
Mm-hmm. Very much. It has a lot of protein in it. You'll get a lot of good, protein. So it's really great for that. So I like to add the protein into my diet, especially as I'm breastfeeding. It helps with the protein intake and a little bit of the fat too. So it's a great option.
Oh, I don't cook. Oh, you don't cook. God didn't mean for me to cook.
Well, these are so easy. Even you could do it. Yeah. All right, so we're up to our final recipe. That didn't take long, did it? So we are going to make a pumpkin pie. This is a crustless pumpkin pie because why not, right? So I have, and I will say, I want to thank Miss Barb because Barb really put in a lot of effort to help me test the pumpkin pie. This was a recipe that came to me with other like dairy and eggs and stuff, and I was trying to make it plant-based and with reduced sugar. And because I'm gluten-free, I have gluten-free flour, but that can act differently than real flour. So I asked Barb to test it, and so she tested it. She did a lot of testing, and I will say this recipe does not work with real flour, and you need to blend it. We found out that it just doesn't work without the gluten-free flour. Ooh, this is... Thank you. you need to use the gluten-free flour. So part of my flour mix has potato starch in it, and it just helps bind everything a little bit better. So the gluten-free flour, if you want to use regular flour, I would suggest just adding a tablespoon or 2 of cornstarch. That'll help it with the binding and help stick together a little bit more, but you really need to blend it. So any blender will work, but don't use a hand mixer because it won't thicken up. It'll stay runny. So we're going to use our blender, and I have a cup and a half of pumpkin. So a cup and a half of pumpkin. And then I have a whole can of coconut milk. Now, the key to this is normally I will say, buy the cheap coconut milk that's in the baking aisle. But unfortunately with this, you want the fat. You want the higher fat content. So I would recommend the Thai Kitchen coconut milk, or a coconut milk that has higher fat on the label. So this has 12 grams of fat per serving. So you want something 7, 8, 9 grams of fat per serving, because that'll make a difference in your pie. So, and if you shake the can like I was doing beforehand, it helps get all of the pieces of coconut milk a little more solidified, because coconut milk tends to separate. So if you open up your can and you have a chunk of coconut milk at the top and a little bit of water at the bottom, just stir it up. So we're going to open up our coconut milk. Okay. And we're going to put the whole can of coconut milk.
Is there different sizes on the can?
That's a great question. It's usually the standard size of 13 ounces or so, but that's usually the standard. So if you see different can sizes, just go for the regular 13-ounce one. And then we are going to add a 1/4 cup of maple syrup. Again, if you don't like the maple flavor, just use agave nectar. So you can do full 3/4 cup of agave nectar, but I like the little maple flavor that it has. So we're going to add a 1/4 cup of maple syrup. And then we're going to add 1/2 cup of agave nectar. That's about 1/2 cup. And then we are going to add some seasonings. So we have some cinnamon. And we're going to add, now I don't have pumpkin pie spice at home. I just didn't have it. So I just used a mix of seasonings. If you have pumpkin pie spice, feel free to use that. But I just used cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. So we're going to add 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Four. And then we're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. And a 1/4 teaspoon of cloves. And then a 1/4 teaspoon, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to add some vanilla. And I have a tablespoon up there, so I'm just going to eyeball that because this isn't a tablespoon. So, yeah, probably not, but it's close enough. I'll adjust it before I bake it. Okay, and then baking powder. The baking powder is essential to get some lift to it, because we are using the regular gluten-free flour. We don't have any lift to it. You can use self-rising flour if you have that at home. Just take out the baking powder. So a tablespoon or 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder.
So you're saying the self-rising flour works with it,
Uh-huh.
but regular flour doesn't?
Well, you'll want to add some cornstarch just to give it more binding if you use any non-gluten-free flour. Gluten-free flour just it likes to make everything dense. So you just have a lot of dense properties in there. So it already is holding everything kind of together and all squished in there. So it works better in this recipe, which I was shocked because normally gluten-free flour doesn't work better. It usually works more difficult. So, all right, and then the flour. We're going to add half a cup of flour. And I do have it. All right, now let's just make sure we got everything. Vanilla, salt, pumpkin pie spice, flour. Perfect. And
I have a question on
sure.
flour.
Uh-huh.
Gluten-free bread flour work?
I would go with regular gluten-free, just plain flour. I don't know what they add to the bread flour, so yeah, as long as it doesn't have any extra like baking powder or baking soda or salt or anything, it should be fine. I don't know.
If you use regular flour, you said to add cornstarch. How much?
Yes, I would say like 2 tablespoons or so.
She's gonna look at it.
Okay. Oh, perfect. There we go. Okay. And so we're just going to blend this. We are going to blend this for a while. You want to blend it. Okay, so I normally blend it for at least 2 to 3 minutes, at least. If you have extra time, blend it for like 5 minutes. You want it to be nice and fluffy. See how it got nice and fluffy? And that was just, I would blend it a little bit longer than this, but you're wanting this consistency of the thickness to it. See how it sticks to the spoon? So you want it thicker like that. If you don't blend it, it won't hold up when you bake it. So it's really important to blend it and to get it nice and thick. And you also notice that the color changed a little bit too. It's a little bit of a softer orange, which is what we want too. So, and then we're just going to pour it into our pan. And I ran out of pie plates, so we're using a little square pie dish. It works great. There we go. Now, if you want a crust on yours, you can use this recipe for a crust as well. But we're just going to bake it like this. That's it. Pretty easy, huh? Maybe you could make pumpkin pie?
I don't have an oven.
Oh, well, then you can't do that.
I lived in a camper for 4 years and I've never turned the stove on.
Oh, okay. We tried that. I couldn't do it because I couldn't cook anything. So I made my husband, we're like, I'm done with this. We need a kitchen. So,
This is so nice and smooth and the taste, it's not strong like the store-bought one.
yeah.
I'm going to tell my son to make that instead of the regular.
Well, it's really easy. I mean, we made it in like 5 minutes. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Oh, okay, great question. So I like Cool Whip, on my pies. So I needed to find a healthier alternative. So we take a can of coconut milk, and with this, with the coconut milk whip, you want a high fat content. So you want a very high fat, like this brand would do a good job. And then don't shake it. Don't tip it. Don't shake it. Don't do anything, and stick it in the fridge. Stick it in the fridge overnight, a couple days, just have it in the fridge. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take it out very carefully without tipping it, open it up, and all of the fat of the coconut milk has separated. So you have fat, coconut milk fat on the top and water on the bottom. We're going to take the fat and you're going to put that in a bowl or something. And you can use your hand mixer for this one. Take your hand mixer, when you put in your coconut milk in the fridge, put the beaters in the fridge too. The beaters for your hand mixer, put that in the fridge too, because you want those nice and cold, because the colder it is, the quicker it sets up, just like when you make normal whipped cream, if you've ever made it from scratch. So you take that, you put it in the fridge, you take it out, take just the fat off. Be really careful not to get too much of that coconut water, because that water will make your whip runny, and it won't hold up and firm up. And then powdered sugar and vanilla, and you just whip it till it gets a nice consistency. It's really super easy. I don't have the measurements offhand of how much powdered sugar or anything, but there's a really good recipe online from, I think it's the Minimalist Baker. If you just Google coconut whip, her recipe comes up, and it's a really good one. Yeah, great question. And you can, like I said, you can use this recipe with crust too. So just put it in your crust and bake it like you would. I am a lazy cook, like I said, so why make pie crust when I don't have to? So that's the pumpkin pie. What do we think? You said it was nice and smooth? Yeah, I like it. Good. Yeah, you want the crust. So you can make the crust. Okay, so that's all of our recipes. That's it. It took 50 minutes to make everything. That's not bad for a nice little meal. Go ahead. Surprisingly not. I was shocked. It didn't. It came right off. I've used glass, so all the pies that I made were with glass, and it just came right off. Nope. No, it just comes off. It's really nice. So, yeah, it's really great. I don't normally typically give lectures during the cooking class, and I'm not going to give a lecture now, but I always get asked, why plant-based? Why don't we use eggs? Why don't we use dairy? What's the difference? Why don't we do that? So I want to answer this question just quickly. Have you ever grown anything? Do you have a garden? Any gardeners? Yeah. Okay, I kill things, so I don't garden. I cook. That's what I do. But when you're gardening, what does your plants need for survival? Water, light, maybe? Yeah, sun, that sort of thing. What happens if you take the water away from your plant? Kills. That's what I do. And sunlight, if you take that away, it kills them, right? Now, let's switch gears and talk about a car. What does a car need to run? Gas. Yeah. Oops, there we go. Okay, sorry. Gas, oil, right? If you put diesel in a gas car, what happens? Problems, yeah. And gas in a diesel car is same things, yeah. Cars aren't meant to have things that they don't like in them, right? So the car was created to run on a certain type of gasoline. Our bodies were created to run on a certain type of food. In Genesis 1:29, God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. God made our bodies to survive on plants, to survive on grains, vegetables, nuts, things like that. So our bodies do so much better when we have less fat, less sugar, and things along those lines. So there's been a lot of scientific studies that have been done, and I have a stack of books here that I use to reference because I ate all the dairy. I love cheese. That was fantastic. And I ate I didn't really like eggs, so eggs wasn't an issue for me. But, meat growing up, the dairy, and all of that. And I started having issues. I personally don't have high blood pressure because mine's actually the opposite. I have high or low blood pressure, but I started having other issues, my brain fog, things like that. My husband has diabetes, so we tried to figure out things to reverse those naturally because the medications aren't great either. So we deep dived into all of the recipes or all the studies, and we found books by like Dr. Neil Bernard talking about reversing diabetes, the China study on what we eat, how not to die. This one was really interesting. So I was reading through this book again to prepare for the class, and you can actually pause Alzheimer's. I don't know if anybody here knows anybody with Alzheimer's or dementia, but you can actually pause Alzheimer's and dementia just as well as the current medications out there with saffron. They were talking about it. It's amazing. The medications aren't great and they don't stop it, but you can kind of halt a little bit of the disease with saffron. I'm like shocked, So the Forks Over Knives plan, they have a really big Netflix following on their movies. So take a look at the studies. This is why I don't eat dairy. Well, I try not to, and eggs and plant-based fats and things or animal-based fats and stuff, because there's just too much evidence that points against it. So that's why I do it. Feel free to look at these. These are from my personal library. I'm happy to, you can come up, take a picture of them, take a peek at them. But that's why I don't eat plants, or why I eat plant-based as much as we can. So any questions? So yes, and maple syrup. I use the maple syrup. Now, if you don't like the maple flavor in there, you can omit that. Great questions. Any other questions? Uh-huh. Yep. And if you don't want to use the maple, just add the equivalent in agave. So it would be, I think, 3/4 of a cup instead of half.
On a plant-based diet, how do you get the protein that's supposed to be only out of meat?
So that's a great question. There's a lot of different protein elements to it, and you can get protein in greens, so your kales, things like that, and tofus, and your nuts have some protein in them too. Actually, kale has more protein in it than a steak. So you can actually get more protein in, a big bowl of kale than you can in a steak.
You have to group certain foods in order to get a balanced protein?
Yeah, and the standard American diet actually recommends too much protein. We actually focus on it a little more than it's necessary. So our bodies don't need that much protein. So when you're eating a balanced, colorful plate, they say, you can actually get quite a decent amount of protein, and on all your other nutrients is in there. It's pretty cool. So, any other questions? That's the How Not to Die. It's by Michael Greger. And he has a cookbook to go along with it, which is also really good too. Greger. And you can come up and look at these after too. So Al, I think we have a couple more drawings. Can you grab those? I have 4 DVDs and 1 little kid's book on health. So, would you help me? Too heavy, okay. All right, Renee. That one's reversing diabetes.
All right. I think I'll try that one.
That one? Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want to pick it? I will look, I promise. Linda? And this one is the reversing diabetes.
Try this one.
Okay. All right, 2 more, Al. Well, 3 technically. Andrea. Andy? Okay, you sure? Okay. Okay. Deanna already left. Here we got 2. Lisa?
Somebody else.
Okay. It's a blank one. That's yours. Evelyn.
Okay,
That one. Okay. Oh dear. I don't.
Valencia, I think. Valencia.
Valencio? Did I say that right? That one. Okay. And then the other one is I think it's Caroline. C-A-R. It's hard to read. Carrie? Is that
Yeah, that's
That's me. Do you want the little kid's book? Maybe you know somebody that would want it. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming. If you have questions, feel free to come up. Thank you.